tagline for what we're doing at Adventist Sports Network is Sports Talk, Ministry, and Excellence. We've been doing a lot of sports coverage, covered the Super Bowl. We recently covered the South Central Conference Final Four and championship games. Every once in a while, I get a really good testimonial story that's exciting and really kind of enhances my soul. I mean, I take it and learn from it, and it gives me spiritual upliftment and power, and that's what we're about on my show. It's not just about covering sports, but it's about, showing love for Christ, showing conviction, showing people that truly believe that the journey towards salvation is much more important than the journey towards wins and losses. So I have, who's become a regular, Carlin Alford, who is the athletic director of FH Jenkins Preparatory School in Nashville, Tennessee. He is also the director of the NCFL, which is the Nashville Christian Fellowship Basketball League, which has a dazzling array of players and talented players from the Middle Tennessee area in conjunction with various multi-denominational teams. An awesome league, great level of play. For the first time on my show, I have Coach Dontae Jones, who is the coach of the middle school basketball team at FH Jenkins Preparatory School. Coach Jones has some of you may recognize his name. He was a very good athlete, an elite basketball player, played for Mississippi State, led them to a Final Four run roughly 20 years ago, played in the NBA, played overseas, very talented guy. He's coaching at FH Jenkins now and running a lot of camps in the Nashville area, using his knowledge and his experience to give back to young people. So you guys have an awesome testimony or an experience. Carlin, I'm going to let you get started. I'm generally going to get out the way on this. But, Carlin, if you could tell my listeners what happened tonight. So you guys have a game. You're heading to a playoff game for FH Jenkins. You've had a resurgence this season where FH Jenkins has some lean years and not had as much success. You came in as AD. You brought in Coach Jones and some other coaches, Coach Bean. You have kind of revamped staff, and this is your first run into the playoffs. You had playoff games scheduled that had to be rescheduled because of inclement weather in Tennessee, and you ended up having a playoff game that was scheduled to be played this afternoon. Carlin, give us a brief description of what was scheduled for today and what exactly happened.
So you pretty much described it. We are members of the Middle Tennessee Athletic Conference, MTAC for short, and our boys, middle school boys and girls, are in the playoffs as pretty decent seeds, upper middle seeds in the tournament, single elimination tournament to determine a champion of the Middle Tennessee Athletic Conference. Like you said, there was some weather issues earlier in the week which caused games, the first round games, really the whole tournament, to be pushed back at least 3 days. So our team, our boys team, and our girls team played yesterday. Boys hosted Providence Christian School. We won, took us out of the first round, and went to the second round. And the second round was basically the quarterfinals because a win puts you in the Final Four. And we were scheduled today, which is Friday, to play at Riverside Christian School, which is in Fayetteville, Tennessee, about an hour and 45 minutes from Nashville. The conference sets the times for the games. They set the game time at 5 o'clock. Sun sets at 5:25. We call, as soon as we knew that we were advancing to the second round, I called the athletic director, Troy Sloan, down there, and, they're not Seventh-day Adventist. They are a Christian school, but they're not Seventh-day Adventist. And he said the earliest that we can schedule it is 4:30. That's because that's the earliest time we can get the refs. They were also hosting a second-round game for their girls, so they had to push that game back by half hour and ask the opponent if their opponent was okay with it. So after all of that, we got down there, played in the game, got the game started. This is part of the scenario in the backdrop. Pastor Fordham, whose two sons play on the middle school team, was with us in the stands, and, we both kind of consulted and said, look, we will go up to the Sabbath hours, and as soon as that, if the game's not over at Sabbath start, we're pulling the plug. We'd agreed upon it. Coach Jones and I had talked about it. Everybody was kind of, we knew, and we also knew in the heat of battle that we may or may not, forget. And our boys were really tight coming out. Didn't play well. Got to the second half. We ended up rallying, get to the end of the third quarter, and we were making a run. We had pulled it to 28-20, and it was 5:24. And we pulled the plug. And the other team knew ahead of the time that, their coach, was very reluctant. He said, can we just finish? And they were ahead. And they knew we were running. And to be honest with you, once our kids got warm and were making a run, I don't think it's unrealistic to project that, we could have really run past them and ended the Final Four. But our beliefs had been put on the table. We came in as a Seventh-day Adventist school. We said that's what we were going to do. Even if everybody in our organization was a Seventh-day Adventist, everybody was on the same page. We walked off with our heads high, and that's pretty much what happened tonight.
So I'm gonna jump in for those listening. So for those tuning in, you're listening to the Lance Day Radio Show. I'm interviewing Carlin Alford and also Coach Dontae Jones of FH Jenkins Preparatory School in Nashville, Tennessee. Carlin's kind of told this story. You had a playoff game for your league. It was sandwiched at the end of Friday. For those that don't understand Seventh-day Adventism that listen to my show, Seventh-day Adventists believe that the day actually ends when the sun goes down as opposed to 12 o'clock midnight like on the calendar. So Seventh-day Adventists do not work Friday once the sun goes down. They don't participate, generally don't watch television or do work activities or non-spiritual activities between sundown Friday night and sundown Sabbath. There have been stories of, it's very similar. Mormons, for example, they don't play and do specific things on Sunday, which is why it's difficult to have professional teams in Utah, places like that. I wanted to ask you, Coach Jones, you're not a Seventh-day Adventist, but you've been working with FH Jenkins. What was your reaction? I mean, you're a high competitor. You played basketball at extremely, obviously the highest level in the world, being in the NBA. What was your, and I've caught a glimpse of your act because I've been to FH Jenkins games. You're a very competitive guy. So I mean, you're talking a lot of smack. You were wearing out your power forwards, your big men. Couldn't make that shot from the free throw line in the high post. And you were wearing him out for 4 quarters. So you're a competitive guy. What was your perspective going into the game, understanding the situation, and then when you actually have to pull the plug?
Well, first of all, with us going into the season was kind of the I would say the culminating tonight was kind of a culmination of everything adding up. We knew going into the season exactly what we were in it for, why we were doing what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And we didn't expect to be, honestly, we didn't expect to be at this point. We talked about it. We prepared what may or may could happen. But our thing coming into, me even being in this situation, and Carlin can attest to it, is bigger than basketball from day one. Mm-hmm. And when a scenario like this came up, it's obvious we're faith-driven in everything that we're doing. So it's bigger than basketball. We understood that. I want to win at all costs when it comes to basketball. But I've been preaching to those kids from day one. You don't really have to look at the scoreboard to impress me, or even the scoreboard doesn't dictate if you're doing everything well either. I want to be able to look at you with my eyes and you be able to feel yourself if you're out there giving your best. And today was one of those moments where we knew coming into it, all I wanted us was to be able to present ourselves well and show these people in the conference what we were about, getting up into that point, and then let everything else happen because it had to happen. And it was not a negative at all. Carlin can tell you, we understand. I definitely understood or I wouldn't have took the position, but mm-hmm. I'm glad it happened in a lot of ways because it let people know in our situation what you may have thought or how you may have portrayed us before now. we're definitely faith-driven, and we're definitely bigger than just a basketball game. And even myself, knowing that part, perception is everything coming in. But I guarantee you after tonight, we will be considered and looked at a little bit better for the decision we made for our not just our program, but for our faith anyway. You know, I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist, but I'm a firm believer in Christ, and I'm a God-fearing. Mm-hmm. Also, for a person from where such humble beginnings of where I grew up and where I come from, to even enjoy such a life, you know, just a normal life is blessings in itself. So I know where I come from and know how I got there. So this decision wasn't even hard or even thought about. We just wanted to make sure our kids got a fair shot at it because they worked so hard to get to this point.
Great answer, great answer, and really a great testimony. It's always good to get perspective from people both that are in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and people that are not in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Carlin, I have a question for you. We talked kind of offline before having this interview. How did the other team respond? You said that people from the other team were overwhelmed by your willingness to walk off the court and take the loss to stand on your religious beliefs. How did they respond?
Well, I'm going to answer in two parts. There were a couple of responses. I really didn't interact with the crowd, but there was a gentleman there who was running the score clock, and immediately after the game, he came up and shook my hand. He had tears in his eyes, and he said, "I admire you guys for your conviction." He was like, "You guys were 6 minutes away." He's like, "I don't know what would have happened. You guys were on a run." And I was like, well, I mean, whatever was going to happen, you know, it was going to end at 5:24. So,
no matter what.
No matter what. We couldn't get it in by 5:24. Now, that being said, the reaction, and I'm going to put this out there. I have no qualms with putting this out there. Their head coach, who we never led the whole game, and at one point we were getting blown out, and their coach used 4 of his 5 timeouts.
So they were competing at the highest level, if I must, you know, kind of add in. And we already knowing in the backdrop, we got to be really careful about everything across the board. And that's why I think in a lot of ways it's good that we were already prepped to make a grand decision. You know, Carlin already, from day one, had already laid out the format of what would happen from day one to the end, and it almost happened 100% correct like that. So I'm proud of the way that we stood up and stayed strong. But like you said, that response from the other team and kind of to see the people like, wow, you know, in a certain amazement, it felt good too. You know, like I say, it's still bigger than basketball. And once we realize that, we're okay. We are definitely okay.
Hello, I am Dr. Arlene Archer, otherwise known as The Life Doctor, and you are listening to the Lance J. Radio Show on Advent Sports Network. Between juggling my professional responsibilities as a clinical psychologist and independent business owner, and my personal interests as a wife and mother, I make the time to fulfill my passion of helping others through inspirational videos. Join me on my YouTube channel as The Life Doctor, where I vlog on home life, education, health, fitness, and more.
In 49 BC, Julius Caesar led an army over the Rubicon River from Gaul into northern Italy. By doing so, he crossed the point of no return and declaration of war against the Roman Empire. Centuries later, you are listening to Jeremy Winston reach his point of no return only on Advent Sports The Rubicon. You're on the ticket with Advent Sports Network, home of Falcon Pride, One-on-One with MJ, and the Lance J. Radio Show.
You've seen them firsthand, so you can kind of gauge the level of kid that we have, you know,
right.
From morale. I mean, great kids. I don't even think they realize what just happened. Honestly, I don't. And I think Carlin might be able to second me on that. I don't really think they realize the magnitude of what happened today and what had to happen. And that's coming along with the type of kids that we're dealing with, the type of parents and families that we're dealing with, and the total environment. And like I keep going back to it, I don't want to keep beating on a dead drum, but it is bigger than basketball. And these kids, and I always remind them, Carlin told me we wouldn't win 5 games, and he was honest. I mean, he was honest as he's been with me since day one. And he knows me. He know I immediately went against that. Like, hold on now, we gonna win more than 5 games just because. He like, you just don't know what we're up against. But I'm gonna be honest with you before you dive into it head first. So these kids are prepared, like you said, your own self. They're gonna remember these life lessons and these things we've shared, other than basketball, than they probably will the basketball part, because down the road, 1.5 of them may continue to play seriously out of the 10 or 11.
Right.
So what we're sharing, what these parents have allowed me, and what the family has allowed me to be, is a breath of not only fresh air, but a sense of, okay, we can think outside the box a little bit. We can be socially acceptable in so many ways, but we can still show that first and foremost, this is why we're here. You know, we definitely have divine faith. We're definitely God-fearing, so that part has to stand front and center. And with the type of organization, the type of community that we're in over there, especially me, because I'm the newcomer, oh, man, the decision today wasn't even, like I said, I don't even think our kids realize what happened. Our parents and the people and the powers that be knew how serious this thing could be, so they prepped us for it. But our kids just knew they didn't play well if they should have on the court. And that coach was very upset because we didn't look like the team that traveled. Other than that, they don't realize the magnitude, but they will.
Right, they will. So for those listening to the Lance J Radio Show, I'm on the phone with Carlin Alford and Coach Dontae Jones of FH Jenkins Preparatory School in Nashville, Tennessee. They're telling a great testimonial story. Basically, FH Jenkins was embroiled in a comeback in a playoff game, playing on the cusp of the Sabbath as Friday night came into existence. They had gone up to that game knowing that if they weren't able to get the game played before the sun went down, that sun was going down at 5:24, and at 5:24 their kids were going to walk off the court and shake hands in order to observe their Sabbath. They lost the game, but probably gained a lot of perspective and really set the bar very high for not just the school's reputation, but in the hearts and minds of the young men and the parents and even the coaches that have participated. Carlin, if you could let me know, I know that, well, both of you guys have a lot of plans. I mean, this is really your first year running the show. Coach Jones has had a year to establish his system and mentor. I know that both of you are heavily involved as far as putting camps together. Carlin, I talk to you all the time about how you're using basketball and Dr. Wood at FH Jenkins uses sports programs, even the flag football program and the track program, as a conduit to bring other young, talented people to FH Jenkins. What's next for you guys? I mean, you were fired up when we talked about an hour and a half ago. You sounded like you and Coach Jones were ready to have maybe take 1 week off, and then the following Sunday you guys are ready to start camps and start training for the 2016-2017 season. What's next for FH?
The map is that we're going to continue to recruit. We've got a couple of basketball camps that Dr. Wood mandated. Now let's put this out there. Dr. Wood, she is not just a basketball fanatic. She's a visionary when it comes to leveraging sports to bring a positive attention, and she's done nothing but back us 100%. And I have to say that Dr. Wood and her support, she didn't know Coach Jones coming in, and to be honest with you, when you talk about someone playing in the NBA, and the negative connotations that come with a lot of NBA players,
definitely,
the lifestyle, this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
She asked no real questions. She said, have them fill out a background check, and Carlin, these kids better learn. And you see it firsthand. We don't give them any option but to learn. Right. And so they don't have an option but to listen. Our kids come up the rough side of the mountain, and it's good for them. It was a transition. It was an adjustment for our parents. But the fact of the matter is, we're putting together a program, not a basketball team. We're putting together a program that will feed itself, that will grow, We're going to outgrow the Middle Tennessee. We've even had talks in the last 24 hours, Coach Jones and I, about whether or not MTAC is even going to be competitive for us. We finished the season 14-5. We started the season. I told them we're going to win 5 games. That's it.
Yeah. We told
and
that was like the most he could get out. He looked through the whole schedule inside, upside down, and kept coming up with 5. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. Look at us now.
We had 14-5. Boys finished ranked number 3. Girls finished ranked number 2 in the conference. And even though we bowed out in the quarterfinals, the truth of the matter is that we should have won that game tonight. As bad as we played at the beginning, we had 6 minutes continual run, and the power of they knew. Everybody in the gym knew. If you're a mild basketball fan, you know what
was happening.
You know when shots were getting made, when people finally, and they knew. And the fact of the matter is, we said our beliefs are more valuable than this Final Four appearance, because even down by 8, we had the confidence of that 14-5 season to know we had that game.
Hey, yo, lesson here, babe. You come at the king, you best not miss.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
Odd things around the house so I could make some money. And one day while I was weeding the garden, and I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but one day while I was weeding the garden, I had an experience that for most Adventists, I don't know what the listenership of your show is, or probably something that is...
It's mostly Adventist, but we're expanding.
All right. Well, to all those who are out there, I had an experience that is a little bit in left field for most people. While I was weeding the garden, there was a presence that just stood next to me. I interpreted it as a messenger from God, an angel, and that angel spoke to me and just told me what my life could be. Told me about it. I was not Adventist at the time. Told me about a church that I would join that needed my leadership. Told me about things that were happening in my family that I did not actually know. And then told me that I would leave New Jersey and go back to Toronto. God would honor every promise that he ever made to me from Toronto. And one of those promises was that I would go to school in the States. That was odd. But I went in a moment from having, people always just ask me to describe it. It was a bright light on my left with an audible voice that spoke and just laid out my whole future in moments to me. I went running out of that garden and ran into the house. And I went from being a guy who, my friend's parents didn't know what I was going to do with my life, to articulating to them in a moment everything that would ever happen to me and for me.
Sports talk, ministry, excellence. You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show.
I think the overall attitude, and for those listening, it's just been an awesome interview with the two of you. I can attest, I have personal ties to FH Jenkins myself and ties to Nashville. I do a lot of work with youth sports at the South Central Conference level. For a school that has the enrollment the size that FH Jenkins has, just the outright showmanship and the ability to pack a gym with 300, 400 people on any given night in the middle of the week with parents and run 4 or 5 games really shows perseverance. It shows leadership. It shows integrity. And like you guys said, I mean, the young men and young ladies that play for FH Jenkins, they really have no choice but to learn. I mean, you pick up on those cues. And as an older man myself now, I can look back into individuals that instilled the importance of competition in sport, but also the life lessons. And I can look back on some of my coaches and how they influenced me. It's an awesome story. Every time I hear, I mean, it's the younger generation, and I work with a lot of young people. The younger generation is so different in the Adventist church. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, if you were good enough to play basketball, there was absolutely no chance that your parents are going to let you play on Friday night. Like, it just was not going to be discussed. A lot of the younger generation in the SCA church, I mean, if they're really good, they play. And, they compromise, or they make a conscious decision that it's worth to play on the Sabbath, and then they deal with that internally and between them and God. But just for a school and, a dozen young soldiers and their coaches to actually take a stand in front of another school that's non-Adventist and to influence them and encourage them inadvertently with their willingness to lose a game as opposed to fall back on their religious beliefs is just an awesome testimony. It really shows the leadership and shows the high caliber of young people and coaches and teachers and faculty that FH Jenkins has. So it's just, I know Dr. Wood is I know that she hates to lose, but I know Dr. Wood, but I know she's very happy, and Pastor Ford is very happy that you represented the school well. I have one more question for the two of you before we wrap up, which is completely different. Carlin's been telling me this story, Dontae, that the first time that the two of you met was a quote-unquote, you really met and got up close and personal, face-to-face. Carlin has been telling this tale that he may or may not have put you on a poster at a Pro-Am league or in a, I don't remember exactly where it happened. Did Carlin dunk on you many years ago, or is Carlin making this story up? Because I have to get to the bottom of it.
Now, if it was 50% questionable, he wouldn't be able to tell it around town, or it wouldn't last past the last guy he talked to. But his respect and the way he's respected amongst the basketball family. See, this was a time when he was still calling the think he was calling the great. See, now you can tell him about it. But this is, and me at that time, my respect in outside basketball, if it wasn't supposedly on that level, was not quite the concentration it should have been. So I'm very disrespectful out there at a time when maybe when they took the picture, I should have been in a different angle. Even though he know and I both know that I was off cue and he was already ahead of the curve for the dunk to happen with me within 3 or 4 feet. But if you took the picture the right way, now what can I say?
Okay, so it was so we're confirming Carlin did convert the dunk. It was an optical illusion. So he dunked. You may have been in the picture.
Baseline in the air.
Okay.
And then when we turn to realize what's going on, it's like, for real? Oh.
Okay. But he did not Vince Carter, Frederick Weiss you, though. It wasn't one of those types of
man.
Carlin's known to add a little bit.
Playing one-on-one every single day in front of those kids. If that happened, I would get mine back every. Do you know how many times I would have to pay him back if it was a Frederick Weiss? Well, Lord, I must.
Right.
But I will tell you one thing. The will to compete, understanding limitations and knowing my strengths in Carlin is a lot of the reason I was so excited about having an opportunity. He'll tell you how excited I was about seeing the work he was doing when I hadn't seen him in so long. But now to this point, really getting close to him and realize that I know why we are together. I know why this mission is for us to complete, because of the type of guy that he is. But I didn't even realize everything, and I've been 2-3 years right there with him and didn't realize half of what I should have known by being right there with him. So now we're becoming more, I'm learning more as a man by hanging around or being close to people who have been men longer than I've had a chance to be men. And the FH Jenkins situation has allowed me to step outside of my comfort zone as well and be something of an influence in ways I would have never imagined, just as they probably never imagined them being the influence sports-wise that they're becoming. So it's a match made in heaven, but Carlin already had the vision. He had the vision well before I even thought. I just agreed once I realized what was going on, but I wasn't my first choice, and I don't think he intended for me to be the choice. But he needed my help, and I needed him, so the wind blew us together, and here we go. And I'm too proud right now. I understand losses. I know how to lose. We didn't get beat today. We didn't get beat. We didn't lose. This game was already won before we started. And for us to even get to this point for this interview and have a chance to talk about our beautiful school that we have, there it is right there. Because 4 or 5 months ago, nobody cared. Nobody cared about FH Jenkins and what attempts they were about to make over the next couple of years. Now they do. Now we got caring people and people who want to know and maybe help. So, Carlin, you already know how I think about you. So continue on the mission. You know where I am. I'm all in. You know, these kids are first. We're all faith-driven, so the man points me where I go. I control nothing.
Advent Sports Network is a 503c charity. All advertising proceeds from the Lance J Radio Show are used to fund nationwide youth sports programs and the Advent Sports Network Mentorship and Development Institute, which provides opportunities for young aspiring Christian journalists to cover athletic events and produce sports-related programming.